when it comes to looking at myself in the mirror, I could put myself down, but in reality, I know that that's literally not done anything positive for anyone ever. I have not heard one person say, "Well, I talk shit to myself every single day, and that's why I'm thriving now." Hey everyone, I'm Megs, and you're listening to the Mindful Megs Podcast, Organizing an ADHD Brain, where you will hear stories from me and others on how we organize both our brains and our lives while living with ADHD. We talk about how ADHD can be your superpower if you know how to harness it. I found out I had ADHD 2 years ago, and it was very difficult for me to find acceptance. Now that I know so much, I want to share what I know and help others understand that this diagnosis is not your downfall. It's a eureka moment where you can now understand how your brain operates and how to figure out how to thrive. You can expect to feel inspired, like you're not alone, and learn about so many of the incredible organizational tools there are to help your head stay on straight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mindful Megs podcast. I am your host, Megs, and today I'm coming at you with a super special solo episode. I have been thinking about recording this episode for a long time now because I keep hearing people talk about ADHD in a way that is highly stigmatized. People think ADHD is just people who are hyperactive, people who make impulsive decisions, and oftentimes people you just can't count on. Maybe they're too messy, maybe they're too cluttered. Well, as a professional organizer with ADHD, I'm here to tell you that some of those things out there, sure, maybe that is an overly biased example of what ADHD can be. But I put together 5 reasons why I think you should find out if you have ADHD or not and how it can be beneficial in your life. I've recently come across people telling me what they think of ADHD. And I also often see people kind of glazing over when I start to talk to them about ADHD and what it is, because I know how powerful a tool it is and how creative my brain works. I almost feel like everyone else should know that too, except that I've done a lot of research on it. So it makes sense that I know a lot about ADHD. I'm not a medical professional and I'm not here pretending I am, but I want to give you some examples of why I think finding out ADHD in my own life has been so incredibly powerful. I want to start with a pretty common reason why people don't find out. And that's because they think they need to go through a doctor to get a diagnosis to find out if they should take medicine or not. A lot of people avoid it and say, I'm not going to take medicine because I just don't feel like I need it, or maybe they've heard certain things about it. And I'm not here to tell you that medicine is good or bad, but I am here to tell you that getting a diagnosis is not just about taking medicine. I mean, think about it. If you get a cold and you're, I don't know, diagnosed with a cold, do you get diagnosed with a cold? Probably not. But if you were to have a cold, you might take medicine, but you also might seek out some other natural remedies that could work for you. Maybe you sleep with an onion in your room, and that works really well to take all the cold symptoms away. I haven't tried it yet, but I really want to try it. So, number 5, this is the reason why you should find out if you have ADHD or not. 100 other ways you can find ease with which to live your life when you know how your ADHD brain works. And so, a really good example of that is some people take supplements. I don't take any supplements right now, but I do have a friend who lives in Costa Rica who does, and she swears by them. Another thing her and I talked about in a podcast at episode that I interviewed her on is how she tracks her cycle. And I've started to do that the same. Now, this is more about women with ADHD. Men don't have a cycle. They have a 24-hour hormone cycle versus women who have a 28-day hormone cycle. When you track your cycle, you'll notice that your brain functions a different way a week before you get your period versus a week after you get your period. And that's because your body naturally produces different hormones during those different events in your life. It's kind of insane. So that's another way that you can start to conquer ADHD. Another thing that I've heard that really helps and has helped me as well is getting up and going to the gym straight away in the morning. People with ADHD lack the dopamine production that people with neurotypical brains can produce naturally, which means that getting up and actually naturally producing the dopamine that can give you a hit to start your day off running will give you some of the focus and productivity that you need to thrive throughout the day. So it's not just about getting up and working out. You're actually getting up and helping your brain thrive in a way that you didn't expect that you could. When it comes to understanding if you have ADHD or not, it's not about a quick fix. And I'm not saying that medicine is a quick fix because for so many, it can give you the results that you need. From my personal experience, when I started taking stimulants for the first time, there was such a negative stigma around taking stimulants for ADHD that I was really negative about it. I didn't want to be seen as someone who needed to take stimulants to thrive. And I've even seen doctors have that negative persona around it, which means that now I feel like I'm doing something wrong, even though it's something that is helping me. And so I started to look at it in a really negative way. There was a time when I stopped taking it altogether, but I didn't have any of the tools that I talk about on a regular basis, either on my podcast or on my TikTok. And I hit a wall pretty fast when I didn't have that to rely on. But again, that doesn't mean that you need medicine to survive. It just means that that's my story. So when I started to read about more of the positive effects of this medicine and how it's not a bad thing, if you find the medicine that works for you and helps you thrive and work on yourself, then that's okay. And whatever the other people say, they're going to have their opinions until they choose to believe something else, until they choose to find another reason, I don't know, to put someone else down, right? I'm sure that there's positives and negatives to everything, but having a diagnosis when it comes to treatment allows you to find the treatment that works for you. And what's really cool is that the treatment that works for you is not going to be the same that works for me because even though we both might have ADHD, my ADHD is going to show up differently than yours does. That's cool because you get to play around with it and figure out what works for you so that you can find the best way to thrive in your life. Coming at you hot with number 4, your emotions. I had no idea that a lot of women with ADHD get misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder because of their mood swings. And because of their emotions and their mood swings, they tend to be more angry. They can have more anxiety and even depression. And a lot of that comes from, I did some additional research on this, and I'm going to drop some links in the show notes below from the articles that I looked up to get some of this additional information. But because people with ADHD have trouble with executive function, and executive function, I'm going to read this, is the ability to organize cognitive processes, including planning ahead, prioritizing, starting and stopping activities, shifting from one activity to another, and monitoring one's own behavior. So, something that's not an official symptom, but something I've seen come up more and more and more is rage cleaning or angry cleaning. I'm so curious if you can relate to angry cleaning or rage cleaning. I first heard about it when my sister told me that she did it. And I'm like, cool. And I was angry cleaning as well. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thing. But I was so embarrassed of it because it came with so many emotions. I thought that was just a me thing. And after discovering that ADHD comes with all of this emotion all at once, I realized that this could be something that comes along with ADHD. I say could because there's not been a ton of formal studies done on rage cleaning and the connection with ADHD, but there's a ton of stories on Reddit. I can speak from my own experience And a lot of it comes down to when we are not taking care of our homes on a regular basis because we're procrastinating, or maybe the cleaning is not getting done as regularly as we want to, we can often just ignore it until we get triggered by something that brings everything to the forefront right away. And in that moment, we're filled with such emotion and rage that it has not been done yet, that now we're going to put all of our focus and energy into getting it done. And the good thing about it is that we're channeling our energy into something productive where we're coming up with a way to take control over the situation again. And at the same time, the reason why you should find out if you have ADHD or not is because you can come up with different ways to manage this. So, one of the things that I do with my clients when it comes to organizing is focusing on small tasks, splitting it up in ways that make sense. I like to set a timer. That helps me because I can often be time blind. I do things without realizing how much time I have left or how much time it's going to take me to get to a certain place. But when I put parameters around me doing something, it helps me. So I'll set a timer for 15 minutes before I go to bed at night and do the dishes. And that helps me understand that I can actually get a lot done in 15 minutes and is not as much time as I'm building up in my head to get done. And I also allow myself to say, okay, after 15 minutes, I'm allowed to be done with this. I don't have to continue to deep clean if that's where my brain is taking me. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is focus on the logic. A couple months ago, I got triggered into angry cleaning, and I was down on the floor scrubbing a baseboard. I'm telling you, that's like this moment comes back to me so clearly in my mind. I was down on the floor scrubbing a baseboard, and I knew I was angry, but I also knew that I wanted to control it, and I wanted to figure out why was I so angry in this moment. And I decided to logically come up with the reasoning behind it. What triggered me in this moment? It could have been that there was, all the clutter on the island and I just didn't like it. And I was frustrated that no one else had done it. And now I'm having to take responsibility and do it. The truth is that me and my family, I haven't created structure and no one else has either, but we haven't created structure and rigidity around what cleaning our house looks like on a regular basis. And that actually helped calm me down a little bit, right? I have a 4 and 6-year-old. So, first of all, they're not going to take responsibility for it, at least not right now, until I start to build their confidence to know that they can take action and do things like that. My husband has ADHD as well. So he might ignore some of those things that are sitting out as well until he potentially gets to the point where he's so frustrated and starts to clean it up. But knowing that we don't have the structure or system in place that helps us keep things neat and clean on a regular basis helps bring peace to me, knowing that, okay, there is a solution to this, and the solution is not getting angry at everyone. And I can still focus my energy to become control of the situation. What I also know is that stepping away from this situation can help a ton. I actually really love to close myself in my closet. Like, the closet doesn't have a door on it anymore, which might have been a bad idea. But when I go in my closet and sit down and just allow myself some peace to sit with what's going through me for a second and remind myself that I'm in a safe place and that it is okay that things aren't clean all the time, it helps. And so I say that this is a very important thing to know if you have ADHD or not, is because your brain is working in a specific way, not to bring you down, but it wants to regain control of the situation. And when you know that you have ADHD and you have trouble with executive function, it's not an excuse, but it's an awareness that allows you to create systems that work for you. So for me, when it comes to cleaning, organizing my life in a way that I have less helps me so much more. Because even when my house is messy now and can look around and it's messy, I still know that there's a place for everything, which makes me feel at peace. I know if I were to dedicate 15 minutes to go and clear a space, I know that it's going to look pretty clean after that, even if I'm only dedicating 15 minutes to it. Versus if I had a lot of clutter and if I had no systems in place whatsoever, I could look at something and get very overwhelmed and know that maybe 15 minutes isn't going to create a dent initially, but over time it could. So that was number 4 for you. Number 3 is understanding the magic of what hyperfocus is. When it comes to ADHD, a lot of the stigma around it is, oh, you can't stay focused and you're very impulsive. How sad for you. Except that those are actually some of our superpowers, believe it or not. And I'm going to tell you why. So, while we can't stay focused sometimes on the tasks that don't interest us, we also can tap into something called hyperfocus. And a hyperfocus, it's where you focus on something so hard and get tunnel vision on something for so long that there's nothing that could distract you from it. In fact, I can hyper focus so much sometimes that I forget to drink water, I forget to eat, I forget to go to the bathroom because I am so engrossed in the task at hand that I am ready to get it done. Like I see a finish line. My brain is so excited to gather the information to get what I need from what I am doing. And oftentimes it's a creative task. For me, it's working with my hands. It's creating something that could be visually appealing, which is also why I love organizing. But it also could be something that I'm super interested in researching. For example, ADHD. I love learning more. I read books. I write about it. I talk about it on my podcast. And I love people who want to learn more about it because I just want to talk about it all the darn time. Because when I talk about it, I'm always learning more from the people I'm sharing with. So, hyper focus, it can also be hard to trigger. I know that I can hyper focus when I am super excited about something. So, for example, the other couple Sundays ago, I edited my podcast episode in the morning. Sunday is my podcast episode editing day. And I did it in the morning, which I don't normally do. Oftentimes I can wait until the evening. But because I did it in the morning, my husband had suggested earlier on in the week that we do something to our wall in our bedroom. And I have trouble sometimes prioritizing things. When it comes to priorities, I get excited about a lot of things. So when he had originally suggested it, I said, "Ooh, that sounds like so much fun, but I have other priorities and I have to make sure that those get done first." And I remind myself of my priorities on a regular basis. But when it came to that project, my priority was done for the day, which meant that I could actually focus and hyper focus on this particular activity. Now, it's not as if I go into it and say, today I'm going to hyper focus, right? But I knew that I was going to do this and I was going to do it for a good amount of time. I also thought that the project might take me 3 hours, and it definitely took like 8 hours. And it was fun, but it was my back started hurting and I was getting exhausted, and I can burn out pretty easily if I'm hyper focusing, which can be one of the downsides. And so when you know you have ADHD and you know that you can hyper focus like this, that's where you can start to create systems and checks and balances of how to keep yourself drinking water. For example, setting alarms. If you ever have me do an organizing session with you, I will often set alarms on my phone to remind me to drink water. And I will also remind you to drink water just in case if you have ADHD. And even if you don't, it's good to stay hydrated. In addition to that, when it comes to impulsivity, I've been told that I can be impulsive, and that's okay. I also make really good decisions based on failures that I've had in the past. And one of the things I did recently was leave my corporate job. I left after working for a company for almost 9 years. I thought I was gonna retire from this company, and after working with a career coach and thinking about it for a long time, I decided to leave without a very formal plan in progress. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to do something more, and I left. And for me, that was a positive because I could have waited a long time. I could still be working there to this day. and I could be finding all of the reasons to stay. This is my story. I'm not saying to go quit your job tomorrow, but I am saying that it's okay if you do something impulsively without fully having a plan, because oftentimes we're following a passion or a dream that we wouldn't necessarily do if we were waiting to have this full formalized plan in process. And a lot of the times, people with impulsivity have a passion with which they speak about things that is infectious and it's contagious. And it makes you excited to be around these people. And hopefully, I'm giving you that because I love to talk about the things that I'm passionate about, which is why I created this podcast. And so, while impulsivity and not being focused or even hyper focusing on certain things can have its downside, when you know that you have those capabilities, you can learn to put systems in place to harness those capabilities instead of allowing it to be a bad thing. I love to go shopping and I love that dopamine hit when I spend that money. And if I'm on a budget or I have other things that take priority when it comes to where I'd like to spend my money, then it could be my downfall if I don't have parameters in place to help me understand where I can be impulsive and where I know I have to have those boundaries up. It's helpful to know if I'm going to the store that I need a list and I can't just go shopping willy nilly unless I have a budget in mind and I say, okay, I'm going to go to the store. This is the amount I have to spend, and that's what I'm allowed to spend. It's good to have parameters because there's other things that can take us down when it comes to this. So find out, if nothing else, then for those things that can be your downfall because you can use them as a superpower. Number two, the world is designed for neurotypical people. When it comes to finding out if you have ADHD or not, a benefit to understanding if you do have ADHD or not is that since the world is designed for neurotypical people, people with normally functioning brains, a neurodivergent brain or an ADHD brain can often feel like they're not enough in the event that they're trying to work in a world that is designed for neurotypical people. A good example here is the 9 to 5 job. If you work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, in a world where you're expected to do certain things every single day, structured, minimal breaks and lunches, neurodivergent people, people with ADHD, typically don't thrive under these circumstances. We thrive under change and things that are different on a regular basis. It doesn't mean that we don't seek routine and we don't seek, things that can help us stay on task. But when we're expected to do the same thing day in and day out, especially going to meetings and getting information dumped on us day after day, if we are not super passionate about everything that's happening, it is going to be very, very draining. In addition to that, when it comes to the workplace or even social calendars with your kids, you want to do all of these things here and there and you want to dedicate yourself. And if you're I know for me, I think it's ambivergent where I can be introverted and I can be extroverted. It just kind of depends on the day and it depends on what I'm going through. I love being around people and I love talking with them. But I've also found when I have people over at my house and I haven't given myself enough time to power up, I will escape to my bedroom just to take a deep breath and to give myself the energy that I need to make it through the night. So that has been an interesting realization for me because I didn't ever realize that that was a thing. I just thought I had to work harder. And something I'm not going to get into too much today, but it also comes from masking. A lot of the times we feel like we need to be on to people please the people around us and to be there to be energetic and excited about so much, but that can be draining and exhausted. So just because the world is designed for neurotypical people doesn't mean that your ADHD brain can't thrive. And one way to be able to do that is by finding ways to help. Noise canceling headphones, for example, are so incredibly strategic in your well being, in your mindfulness, in being with yourself and not getting distracted by so many of the things that are going on around you. And I highly recommend them. And especially when it comes to things socially, maybe having people over to your house isn't necessarily your best thing, but maybe when you meet with someone a one-on-one and you go for a nature walk with them, that's what builds you up instead of drains you. So thinking about what really can help you instead of things that you feel like you should do because it feels normal to do it because everyone else does it. Right? So you can start to recognize and question the things that you've always done that don't necessarily bring you joy, and you can start to figure out what does bring you joy, and you're allowed to cater to yourself and your brain based on what it needs and what it's telling you. All right. The number one reason why I think that you should go find out if you have ADHD or not is because I want you to know, and I needed to hear this too, is that you're not broken. Nothing's broken. You're just different. And if you're anything like me, as I was growing up, I wanted to fit in so much. I just wanted people to like me. I wanted to say the right things. I wanted to understand how I could fit in so I could be popular. I thought that that was what I needed to do in life to thrive, was that people needed to like me and then therefore I would be golden. Except that now that I have grown and the more I grow, I realize that being different is incredible. And because I understand a little bit more about how my brain works differently, I'm able to work with it instead of against it. So I do know that I need to take breaks. I do know that I need to be mindful in the morning and meditate and like use any sort of technique that's going to help me focus on believing in myself during the day instead of bringing myself down. So something that I know that works for me is if I make a plan with someone and I don't write it in my calendar with a reminder that's going to remind me what's happening that day, it does not get done. And it's not because I don't remember it. It actually will pop up in my memory multiple times. But if I don't write it down and have a reminder, it will leave my brain. Because when it comes time for me to actually execute on that task or meet you for lunch or dinner or even just a phone call, it will not happen if it's not written down. And that's because my brain is not going to trigger me at the specific time that I'm asking it to trigger me. And that's okay. So I know that if I want to get something done, it has to be written in my calendar. I also know that if I don't have it written in my calendar to do at a specific time, so for example, birthdays, I know that if I write that it's someone's birthday and if I don't wish them a happy birthday right away when I see it, I might remember 5 times throughout the day and say, "Oh my gosh, I need to remember to do that." But if I don't set a reminder to actually do it, it won't get done. And it's not because I don't have every intention of doing it. And so I'm not using that as an excuse. I'm using that as a reminder to myself that if I say, "Oh, I'll get it done," I also have to tell myself, like, "If you're not writing it down, you will not remember to get it done, Megan." And so freaking do it. Write it down. Put a reminder in your phone. Use anything that's going to help you remind you of the tasks that need to happen. Executive function is not our best skill, which means that we need other tools to help us, and the more we automate things, the better we can do in life. Sometimes I think about my brain as a runaway train. When I grew up, I was really, really good at talking down to myself. And I was inward with my feelings a lot. I just remember being alone a lot with my feelings, whether I was in my room or up in my upper field singing or doing whatever I did as a kid. I just remember thinking a lot. And my brain would take me on a train ride of stories that I would tell myself that weren't necessarily based in fact, but I didn't realize how much control I had over that. In fact, it wasn't until my 30s that I started to realize how much control I have over my thoughts and my feelings and how I'm interacting. It was probably a couple of years ago where I really just started understanding that I am in control of everything that I do or say. I can't control anything that others do or say, but I'm in complete control of what I do or say. And so something that I remind even my girls to this day is that, okay, you're not making anyone else angry. You're not making anyone else sad. You do have an effect over them, but just remember you're the only person that you have control over your own emotions. Taking responsibility for that was a really powerful thing. So when I think about my thoughts and I think about how I have my whole life taken myself down this road of negativity, sometimes when it comes to my body image and looking in the mirror and thinking about who I am as a person, I also now know that I'm in control of stopping that. So instead of my brain going down this runaway train track where this train is taking me down to, I don't know, like a very gloomy, gloomy place where I don't want to be, I would rather be traveling in the Swiss Alps where I see these beautiful snowy mountains of my life and incredible opportunities for me to achieve. That's the path I want to go down. And that's the path that I choose to believe for myself every single day. So when it comes to looking at myself in the mirror, I could put myself down, but in reality, I know that that's literally not done anything positive for anyone ever. I have not heard one person say, "Well, I talk shit to myself every single day, and that's why I'm thriving now." Okay, thanks, right? So if I want to thrive in life, I'm going to talk to myself in a positive way. And the more I do it, the more I can practice doing it, especially when I'm in a negative space. Because it's oftentimes when we're in those more negative spaces that it's harder for us to do the things that we know are positive for our brains and for ourselves and for our lives. So that was number one. What I want to know is what is one thing you learned about your ADHD brain today, or possibly someone else's brain, if you're listening for someone else, that makes you see it a little bit differently or makes you see yourself differently? I'm so curious and I would love for you to share your thoughts. All my contact information is in the show notes below, as it always is. Shoot me a message if you have any additional questions or if you want to know more about organizing both digitally or physically. I would love to share more about how I have organized my life and the life of my clients to help bring them peace in their life. So, contact me. I want to hear from you. I just want to know. Thank you so much for today. I'm so excited to share this journey with you. As I learn more, I'm going to continue to share more with you because just because someone's done this before and learned about this and talked about it doesn't mean that everyone else knows. The more we talk about this in a positive light and the more we put it out there for people to consume how incredible ADHD and neurodivergent brains in general can be, we can start to understand each other in a different lens. Just as neurotypical people bring beautifulness to the world, so do neurodivergent people. And the more we can understand how our brains can work together in synchronicity and the diversity that we bring to the table, the better we can thrive. I know I say that a lot, but I mean, life is about thriving, not surviving, right? And so why not bring more positivity to your life? Thank you so much for listening today, and I will talk to you soon.
Oh, and before I forget, I put together a little template for myself. It's a PDF download for my daily to-do list. I only list 6 things on it a day. I know that sounds like so little, but if you're anything like me, that you make a ton of lists that never get checked off, and then next day you're making a list that's 30 things long and you can't seem to get it done, try this out. At the top, it's priorities, and then you list the things that you need to do with your priorities. Then you add it to your Google Calendar or something that's going to remind you. It has helped me so much. And then I'm constantly evolving it so that I can share and see how it helps people. And of course, share how it's helped me. I think no matter what, you can take a look at it and see if it's something that can elevate your life, even if you don't take it exactly how I do it, which is cool. So I'll drop the link for that below. It's always on my link tree, which I have down below in the show notes.
And I've included a link to Remedy Bath Skincare below. This is owned and operated by one of my favorite people who has been in business for a couple years now. And I have been using her CBD bath bombs for years, and they're so incredible. I've never had a bath bomb that smells or works better than this, and CBD is just an extra pressure taker offer, if those are the words you want to use. Check it out below. I also included my link. It's Meg Bathco, and you can save 10% off of your order. Another way you can support the podcast is by using my link if you want to try out HelloFresh. It's an amazing way to automate your grocery shopping and try new foods. It takes so much of the thinking out of planning for the week. My ADHD brain has been so appreciative of HelloFresh. We've actually been using for I think all of 2024 now. We've tried so many new foods, some that we didn't like as much as we have liked, but oh, so many amazing flavors. And I'm so thrilled to not have to think ahead to try to figure out what's for dinner, especially when my husband and I are managing jobs and then, of course, our kiddos at the same time. I want to reiterate, I am not a doctor, and most of the people I talk to are not doctors or medical professionals. What's really important here is that you shouldn't be using the show to diagnose. I wanted to make this show available to people who wanted to be able to relate to other people like them. I know I needed this tenfold when I first found out that I had ADHD, and I didn't know there were so many other people out there who had either gone through similar circumstances or were going through them at the same time as I was. So if this helps anyone feel like their brain works like other people's and we can relate to something, if you're trying to figure out if you have ADHD or not, please talk to your therapist or a medical professional so that you can truly understand what kind of options you have out there for support and, of course, for medicine. And then come here as you're along the ride for the journey and listen to people who are going through similar circumstances and understand that it's not a one size fits all sort of diagnosis. There's so many options and opportunities out there for you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to hear from you.